My God, what did these Jedi do? Oh, I knew it was serious when Torbin willingly took the poison. My goodness, how that scene unfolded. First, he instantly knew that was Mae, and he said he'd been waiting for her, even though he'd been in a force coma/meditation pod or whatever. I loved that. For like 10 years. And he said, forgive me. We thought we were doing the right thing. Oh, that's when I knew was real and that this was a very good mystery. I can't wait to see it unfold. And it has so many good layers. All right, so the basic setup is that there were once these twins. I've seen the first 4 of 8 episodes, and you're going to get some really cool answers, but also new questions real fast. But so far, in the first 2 episodes, we know that there are twins who were discovered when they were little by 4 Jedi on a distant planet. And those 4 Jedi were Indara, Torbin, Kelnacca, and Sol. Speaking of Sol, even though Mae is targeting all 4 of them, I don't think he was in on whatever happened, because he, like Osha, thought Mae was dead. But again, Torbin knew that she wasn't. You could argue that maybe that they sensed her, but Sol didn't sense her. So something's going on. And by the way, Mae thought Osha was dead. So I'm very curious to see what happened. This is a little soap opera, which of course was part of the magic sauce for X-Men 97. Evil twins! That scene where Osha and Mae see each other for the first time as adults, having both thought the other was dead. So much drama, so much emotion mixed up. It was excellent. It was very well done, thanks to some Parent Trap style acting from Amanda Stenberg. Oh, she's great here. Again, just to reiterate, I've checked her pronouns and she is happy with they, them, or she, her. All right, so yes, we're dealing with a good twin and an evil twin. Oh, I love it. I love it. That's what we wanted for Henry Cavill over in Mission Impossible. But unfortunately, this was revealed to some people in the press for this show. Word got out it was twins, but I didn't know going in that there were twins, and I loved it. It was so good the way it unfolded. Because the first episode was so well written, and that Osha, at first, you think that it was her. Because they're like, where were you last night on our night off, Osha? We didn't see you at the bar or whatever. And she was like, I was doing my own thing. And you were like, killing Jedi? Is that what you do on your night off? It was great. It seemed so classic. But then they had this great twist that, you were thinking, is she innocent? Is she not innocent? What's going on? But then the proof is on the prison transport when she ain't got no force juice. She can't bring her droid to her. So you're like, it couldn't be her because the assassin wields the force really well. I love that. But it was a great setup, a very cool murder mystery unfolding as it should. I loved it. And it was this young woman at the center of all of it. And it in fact reminded me of a lot of the teen murder mysteries that I read as a teenager, like from Lois Duncan. So I thought that was great. So much good stuff to discuss. So let's start with the murders. Murder! Two episodes down, 2 Jedi down. They're falling fast. The opening fight with Carrie-Anne Moss is excellent, as you would expect for Trinity, and creator Leslie Headland said that's exactly why she cast Carrie-Anne Moss, because everybody would be like, Trinity! Now, Indara is dead, but don't worry, Carrie-Anne Moss fans, we got flashbacks coming up, and they're very, very good. Now, as I said in my non-spoiler review, I really love that this show has given the Jedi a very distinct fighting style, which we can talk about more here because you've seen it now. And I hope that Star Wars, what do you think? I hope that Star Wars uses this fighting style across the board going forward. To me, as I also said, Headland and her team have redefined the Jedi, going from space knights or space monks to space social workers who can fight. And their style is almost entirely defense, because to them, fighting is the last resort. It's the last thing they want to do. So Indara almost entirely evades. But at the same time, she's also trying to end the fight with words, logic, reason, talking her opponent down, but also trying to get more information out of them to survey the scene. Who trained you? What a line. Particularly delivered by Moss and echoed in episode 2 by Sol. Who trained you? As you'll see on this show, the Jedi are pretty much the only Force users at this time in the galaxy, 100 years before episode 1. And they're not only very territorial about it, but they've become a little bit too comfortable. Who else could have trained her but a Jedi? They're about to find out. There seems to be a little CGI in this fight. A little of it was, to me, a little distracting. Like, I think they sped Moss up a couple of times. I was like, someone hit the fast forward button. And I think there was some face replacement maybe, or a digital double. Just a couple of times it was off, which is weird because The Matrix, I never felt that way. And that was made a long time ago. All right, but anyway, here, the Jedi only draw their lightsabers as a last resort. And as Mae says, if they're prepared to kill. And Indara, well, it turns out a lightsaber is pretty handy in a knife fight. I love using knives with the Force. It's such a great idea, even if a lightsaber can make quick work of them. But as the Grand Inquisitor pointed out back in, with the timeline of Star Wars in the future, but this has long been a problem of the Jedi, that you can exploit their need to do good. And sure enough, Mae brilliantly does that by putting an innocent bystander in danger, and as Indara saves them, she leaves herself wide open to a kill strike. And the way, it was a great moment, but Carrie-Anne Moss really sold that, the way she crumpled, but yet still was very grand and regal as she fell, and then you knew she died because the blade fell. It was great. It was really, really well done. I mean, what a death scene. What a death scene. Then in episode 3, Torbin. And as I said, I loved that force bubble that protected him and the way they, that Mae dealt with it at first. Like she just couldn't get past it. I mean, it was really well acted too, because that didn't require any visual effects, but they totally sold me on the bubble that was around him. I was like, you're not going to be able to get through that. And again, as we learned, he'd been that way for 10 years. I think it was 16 years since the actual incident, but he's been pretty down for the last 10. Now that's some crazy aging makeup on Tommen Baratheon. I didn't know it was him until a little bit later. But yeah, I was like, why'd they age up a clearly young dude? But again, it's for the flashbacks, as you'll see. All right, so we're not exactly sure. We're also not sure why Mae wants these 4 Jedi dead. And we're also not quite sure why her new Sith master wants her to kill them without a weapon. She doesn't even know why. And neither does her fellow cult member, Quimir. I love this guy. And I love how they talk about their master. Strong Voldemort vibes, by the way, right? And Quimir is no dummy either, realizing when Osha is pretending to be Mae. I loved it when he got in real close and he was like, you're so much like her, but like also different. I was like, this guy's great. Get out of there, Osha. In Star Wars in the past, the Sith have always had these grand reasons. They're always very, they're always posturing as to why they're doing evil. So it was really cool here to see a low-level evil discussion, right? These 2 acolytes just talking about having to kill some Jedi, right? Because their master told them to do it. They're, again, they weren't like, they must die, right? I mean, Mae had that a little bit, but they were like, yeah, we got, it's like watching 2 evil henchmen have a discussion. And I love that stuff. Now, their master says that the only thing that can kill the Jedi, and I think he's talking about the Jedi in a grander sense, like the Jedi, is an acolyte who can kill the dream. And I think the reason that he wants Mae to kill a Jedi without a weapon has something to do with Indara at the very beginning saying that a Jedi would not attack someone who was unarmed, right? I mean, Mae cheated because she was actually armed and ended up using the weapon. So if the Jedi were to kill someone who was truly unarmed, then they would be hypocrites. Right? But that can't be the only thing either, right? I think Mae's master is talking about creating a competing religion. And as I said right now, the Jedi are the only real Force users in the world of Star Wars. So if you can create a competing group of Force users who have some legitimacy, perhaps because they're able to kill a Jedi unarmed, revealing the Jedi's hypocrisy, but also the greater idea of the Jedi. So the Jedi are presenting themselves as this peaceful group. They're the only ones that can use the Force. So you would kill that idea by showing it to be a lie in every way possible. So that's interesting to me. Although with no Star Wars social media or the news, I mean, of course, Andor had news. Although where did the news go during the original movies and stuff? But anyway, this was 100 years in the past. And there's no news. There's no social media. But yet, in real life, religions still spread. So I guess it's the same thing, which, again, is very interesting. As I also said in my non-spoiler review, the Acolyte, more than any other Star Wars material before it, explores the Jedi and the Sith, and more, as you'll see, as religions. And I guess even in some ways later the Rebellion takes on religious properties, which is why the show is called The Acolyte, someone who believes in a religion and carries out its commandments due to their faith. Although I gotta say, Mae doesn't seem to be that faithful. I mean, she's certainly motivated, but anyway. And so this new group, the Sith, if they can get their own acolytes, then maybe they can compete with the Jedi. They're like a new religion. They're an emerging religion. And that's the way I think you really have to look at it. Religion is a big metaphor across the show, not only with the title, but Khmer saying that Torbin, what he really needs is absolution, which in religion means forgiveness, which is often done through the taking of the sacrament. Communion, right? Which is why Khmer, it's no mistake that he holds up the poison, the leaves like that, where they look almost like communion wafers. And that's exactly how Torbin takes the poison, like he's taking communion to get forgiveness. Pretty good. So Mae is tapped into the dark side of the Force. So what's going on with Osha? Again, now that, I don't want to give anything away. They've given a little bit of away in interviews, but I don't want to give it away to you in case you haven't seen that stuff, right? But again, as we see on the prison transport, as of these 2 episodes, she can't access the Force and was kicked out of the Jedi for lack of improvement. They're like, you can't, you're not a good Jedi, get out of here. I really liked the opening scenes with her on that Nemodian ship because they felt so organic, but I couldn't believe they brought those aliens back from episode 1 who were rightfully criticized, right? And they also look exactly like they did in episode 1, just like the Jedi look like they've always looked. So this does not feel like the olden days of Star Wars whatsoever. But yes, the scenes on the ship with Osha I think are really fantastic because they give her a grounded feel, which is a stark contrast to her sister, who has a fantasy element to her very much. So again, it really puts them at odds with one another, but also, they complement each other. I've heard Amandla Stenberg say she wanted a yin-yang kind of relationship between the two of them, and I think you're seeing that in many ways. I also, again, love Osha's pocket droid. How great is it to have a droid that can go in your pocket? Great idea. And that droid's name is Pip. Love him. The prison transport scene was great across the board. Not only, of course, revealing that Osha didn't have any Force ability, couldn't master the Force, but I love the flight droids that turned into regular chairs when they were disabled in case you wanted to fly the craft manually. What a great practical design. I was like, that's amazing. I rewound it so I could see it again. I thought it was so cool. And then also that parasite that controls dangerous prisoners. They had something similar to that, like the mind reader in Rogue One, which I didn't really think worked. But this I thought worked really well. And I was scared when it started flying around the ship. I was like, uh-oh, that thing's loose. I'm too bad. Maybe it'll come back into play, but in the first 4 episodes, it hasn't come back into play. And while she might not have her Jedi abilities, Osha very much has the soul of a Jedi because she tries to save that dangerous prisoner by getting the parasite off of him. But then he turns on her and takes the last escape pod, which is the kind of stuff that always happens to Jedi. I find it pretty incredible that she survived that crash just by strapping herself into a regular seat. There weren't even any space airbags that deployed, but whatever. I'll go along with it. There were also some other elements here that you're going to see mirrored in a future episode that we'll talk about then. All right. Now, I think the mystery of Osha and Mae is really well done here. And at first, I thought maybe a shapeshifter was at play. Even when she saw herself as a child and her eyes went black, I was like, oh, is this a shapeshifter? But I like the idea of twins. I think it's a much better idea. Again, very soap opera-y. And don't forget the idea of a Force dyad. Now, this was talked about with the rise of Skywalker because Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, and Rey were a Force dyad, and you just began to see the powers and the things that they were capable of doing. But then they dropped that because they killed one half of the Force dyad, which was ridiculous. But I'm excited that this show might actually really explore the idea of a Force dyad, right? Because again, not only was it a pair, here, actual twins, but one's light and one's dark. The light's, the Jedi and the Sith. I just think it's really, has a lot of great potential. Now let's talk about Master Soul. I think he really came into his own when he takes on Mae in episode 2. I was like, this guy's awesome. This is another great fight scene. I actually thought it was even better than the Carrie-Anne Moss one. But also, I think one of the reasons it's so good is that it builds off of that fight scene. It might not have been as good if we hadn't already watched the other one. It cements the style of fighting that we saw with Indara. Soul fights almost entirely defense, also talking to his opponent, not only trying to dissuade them from fighting, but getting a better understanding of them in the situation. For instance, he realizes right away, so I guess the beginning of each fight, we have that line from Indara about a Jedi never fights someone who's unarmed, and Mae was like, that's a lot. So I'm like, oh, I'm curious to see where that's coming from. But also when Soul fights her, he goes, why do you insist on attacking me without a weapon? Although, of course, she has some hidden away, which he quickly takes away from her. But he also wants to know, just like Indara said, who trained her. And he mistakenly assumes that she has had Jedi training, just poor Jedi training. Instead of maybe it occurring to him that she had been trained differently, which just shows the hubris of the Jedi, even a swell guy like Soul. But also because at this point there was nothing else. Well, that's not entirely true, as you're going to see, but it's very interesting. Soul even uses his Jedi mind powers to discover that Mae doesn't know the identity of her new master and couldn't tell him even if she wanted to. Perhaps her master preparing for this very possibility so that she couldn't give him away even with the Jedi mind trick. Not only is this fight very, very well choreographed, but it's excellently scored by Michael Abels, going from heart-pounding to having some really great fantasy mystical elements at the end when Mae finds herself cornered by the Jedi. It took on like this cool, John Williams kind of kind of moment. And I was like, this score is incredible. And also there was a Batman moment. When Mae uses the Force to create a cloud of dust to cover her escape. I was like, Batman would be proud. Finally, as Mae makes her escape, which looks like a scene out of any Star Wars show, by the way, with that vehicle and everything. But Osha confronts her, prepared to kill her sister for killing their family and trying to kill her. Again, this scene is extremely well done, and they truly feel like two different people. But also I felt two innocent people, which really I thought was quite the curveball. I'm like, what's going on here? Is Mae, maybe she's not evil. I mean, we saw her kill 2 Jedi. But we don't know what those Jedi did. We don't know the circumstances. Maybe Mae is an anti-hero like Loki. Osha can't go through with it. She fires at Mae, but misses. Although, I think, Osha wasn't a very skilled Jedi, but I think she intentionally missed both times. But she fired just, because she wanted Mae to know she was pretty ticked off. So we end episode 2 on a great cliffhanger, right? Kamir says he knows where Kelnacca is. And we go ahead to that planet. Great cliffhanger ending. Kofar. And we see that Kelnacca has chosen to not only live in exile, but in a very dangerous forest. Oh, you're going to see how dangerous that forest is. Again, what did these Jedi do that they're punishing themselves? I can't wait to find out. I'm excited about it. How about you? That's my breakdown of The Acolyte episodes 1 and 2. What do you think of it so far? Were you as pleasantly surprised as I was? Who are your favorite characters? And how do you like watching a dark thriller in the world of Star Wars? And what do you think of some of the changes they've made to the Jedi? Do you like these, or do you hope they stay just with this show? I love them. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.